It was kind of interesting because I originally didn't set out to do a Cyberpunk game. I set out to do a Blade Runner game. It's my favorite movie. That was my original goal. While I was working on it, I heard about Cyberpunk, but I didn't know much about it. Friends of mine I have in the business, a guy named Rob Pruden, he had a Cyberpunk author in his group. So I said, okay, so what do you write? And he said, we wrote this book called Hardwired. And I said, okay, I'll go get it. So I go out and I get Hardwired and I go, damn, this is great. It's like Blade Runner, but it's like mobile. It's moving. The protagonists are less kind of run down and, gentlemen losers. They're more active characters. They're not heroes exactly. They're not superhuman, but they have greater agency. And so I went back and said, okay, I've decided I'm going to do a Cyberpunk game. And I went ahead and started writing what would eventually be what we call 2013, your first Cyberpunk edition. We were still kind of winging it on a lot of things. Before I finished it, I finally got turned on to William Gibson. And I said, my God, how did I miss this guy? His stuff is so good. I said to my wife that night as I'm sitting and reading it in bed, like, this guy's so good, it makes my teeth hurt. We had already kind of set the direction of how we were going to do everything. As a result, a lot of things are kind of they're a little asynchronous traditional cyberpunk, because we were more influenced by things like Hardwired and classic high-speed science fiction. Walter's a friend of mine, and I often said, you're to blame for me doing it like this, because the thing with Gibson is that it is much more like Blade Runner, in that the characters do the caper, but they don't come out of it victorious. I was at that point really tied to that kinetic energy, and then after that I read Voice of the Whirlwind, which is another book Walter wrote, and I went, okay, this is the kind of style I want, this is the feel. By that point, what we were doing was kind of our own version of cyberpunk, and then we started doing what we call the Cyberpunk Masters series, which is we would find writers like Walter or Alec Effinger, for example. George Alec Effinger did When Gravity Fails with us. We try to fit their worlds in, because by that point we knew there was this genre out there and we were only touching like one little corner of it. Other things that would have been tied into this, one of them is the movie Hackers, weirdly enough. Hackers is a real product of the 80s, but what I love about it is characters involved, again, have a great deal of agency, and they're up against not just political forces, the government, but they're also up against people who have betrayed the ideals of free information. So it has a sort of really cool rebellion thing going on. The other one, I would say, weirdly enough, is Streets of Fire. I would have to say that had a really big effect on me, because from there, a lot of what Fixers and Rocker Boys and even Nomads came out of.